So I just made a cardboard template, to fit the shape of the hull. The top is level to a mark over there, and that fits both sides, forward and starboard, fine. So I'm gonna take that out and go cut a couple of pieces of plywood. If I think I've got some plywood. I'm cutting a curve with a skill saw. It actually works pretty good as long as the curve's not too tight. This is 3/8 inch. It's birch plywood, but it's marine plywood. It's Baltic birch or Russian birch, but it's I bought it specifically as marine plywood for a project a while back where I needed something thin and light and strong. I'm going to use this for these bulkheads, which I'm going to most likely paint anyway. But like I say, it actually is a marine plywood. No voids, waterproof glue. It's made out of the Baltic birch, which is a pretty good product. I have a bandsaw in the shop, but whenever it's a really large curve like this, a lot of times you can actually cut it fair with a skill saw than you can with a bandsaw. Okay, there it is just dry fitted in. I've got it popped in with a couple of screws. I've got to epoxy the edge of it and where it fits against the hull. That fit pretty good. I put a 3/4 inch cleat here, drop down 3/4 of an inch, and then I'll put a cleat down the front of it, flush with the front of it, and then I'm going to just build a face frame to go on the front with a door. And then I'm going to put a 3/4 inch plywood sub top on that cleat that's dropped down so that this 3/4 plywood is flush with the top of this panel, and that'll be flush with that line. I'll cut the sink hole out, and then I'm going to mount the sink from the top of that, but countersunk in until the lip of it is flush. And then I'm going to put my permanent countertop on top of that, and it'll be like an undermount sink. This is just a piece of temporary 1/4 inch for my spacing to get this flush here. Again, there it is, dry fitted in the boat. And then this will have the permanent countertop will go on top of this and cover that lip of that sink. So it's basically an undermount sink. So I'm going to pop it back out and sand it and epoxy seal all the edges and faces on that right there before I put it in, and then it'll be ready to go in. And on this other side, that panel is mounted in, and all this has been sanded, ready for epoxy, coat of epoxy. All this been sanded out, ready for epoxy. But here's a good example of why you should always inspect your through holes. This through hole where the head used to go out, pump out through, the seacock had been taken off of it and had just been capped with a bronze cap. And I just took a pipe wrench, just barely touched it to take it off, and it just literally just fell off in my hand without even turning it with the wrench. You can see there how corroded it is. See how it's just all broke up and corroded? It just literally just snapped off with, I didn't even turn it. I mean, I just laid the wrench on it and it just literally broke off. So if I had launched the boat with that cap on there and did check it, probably wouldn't have been too long before I would have had a sunken boat. That's literally just the old bronze that is just completely eaten away. So needless to say, I'll be taking that whole thing out. That's the only one in the whole boat, by the way. That is the only through hole in the whole boat. So I'll be taking that out and doing away with it. Sink's mounted. All that's wet epoxy. I set the sink in with thickened thickened epoxy, and just set the sink in while the epoxy that I had saturated the plywood with was still wet, tacky, and then put it in with little short stainless steel screws. So it's in a bed of thickened epoxy, and then I just put a little bit around the top of it there just to kind of flush it out. So when the final top goes on, all that gets covered up, and it'll just be flush with the inside of the sink. So now I've got to decide if I want to just patch that hole completely and do away with that through hole totally and run this sink to the bilge like it was originally and then pump out the bilge, or do I want to try to keep a drier bilge and put a through hole? The problem with this sink, because it is so deep, the water line outside the boat is like right there. So if you heel over at all, you'll be getting water in that sink. So I think that I will probably just run it to the bilge and be safe, and then just glass over that hole, taper it out inside and out, and glass it in good. So now I've got to take out this through hole, and I can't get it to break loose with the wrench. So what I'm going to do is drive the wooden plug in it nice and tight, and then cut it off with a hacksaw. And then I'll take this 2-inch hole saw, center it in the plug to, take care of my pilot bit, and then just slowly drill out that those old corroded bronze threads. This 2-inch should go just around the outside of the threads, and I feel certain it's a 2-inch hole through the hole anyway. If I take out the through hole and glass it in, then I've got to run the sink drain to my bilge, which is the way it was from the factory, from the 60s. A lot of boats are done that way. It just gives you a constantly wet bilge if you use your sink at all. I should have checked that before I started building the cabinet, because now it's going to be harder to get a drill in there. But I think I can. I can also drill it from the outside. That might be easier. That would be probably make more sense to drill it from the outside. I can also take a multi-tool or a sawzall and cut the flange off of it from the outside, and then knock it through with a hammer from the outside. That might actually be easier than drilling it, but anyway, got to get it out either way. Got to come out. We'll see if I can't drill out this old through hole. This is the old style that was let into the glass flush, and broke off on the inside where the threads are completely corroded. So what I'm doing is just driving a wood bung in it to find a center point for my pilot bit. Just measuring to put me a X in the center of it from a pilot hole. The bronze is fairly soft. All right. I'll still have to knock out that bronze flange. It's set in bedding and tapered into the fiberglass. Just doing some sanding this morning. Got that panel sanded down. And back in there, it don't look like it, but all that sanded, ready for a bilge coat. I got all of the old tabbing cut off where the old little panels were here under the bunks. Got all that cut out on both sides. Everything kind of vacuumed back up. You might notice the lead trim ballast here and here. This boat was designed to be able to have a diesel engine in it right there, and I'm assuming that the trim ballast is, to compensate for there not being the diesel engine in it. This one never had a diesel in it. Toying with the idea of putting one in it though, but I don't know. Sink, oh, that turned out good. Everything's nice and strong and sturdy. Everything's coated with epoxy. Sink's bedded in. All ready for the final countertop to go on after I get the face on it. I got that old through hole cut out that was corroded so bad. I'm going to grind that out and patch it back inside and out. I guess next I've got to put in some more supports for my bunks. So I'm putting in some cross pieces because I'm going to run my plywood lengthwise, so it'll need some cross supports to keep it from sagging in the middle. I could cut it in the 4-foot direction instead of the 8-foot direction and run the grain this way and probably get by without them, but I just prefer to run it lengthwise. These cross supports are going to serve another purpose. I'm going to have a cutout right here to access this storage, and whenever I cut my cutout holes in my plywood here, the hole will overlap this board right here about an inch, half inch or 3/4 or an inch or whatever, and that will support the cutout plug, if you will, that'll rest here, and there'll be one on the other side of my cutout opening as well, and that'll support 2 of the sides. What I've done, I've just got that far end over there on my marks there. It's just a fraction long. I may take a 1/16 off of it and drop it just a touch to allow for some glue adhesive, and then I'm just squaring it up to this front runner here, and everything will be just cut square 90-degree cuts on this end, and then everything will fit back there. And that does have about a 3/8 of an inch out of square there to fit to the hole. And then right now it's a 45-degree angle. That'll get a little steeper. The next one will probably be a 50, and then on down in yonder it's going to be real steep. I'll probably have to cut those with a bandsaw. So I'm going to square that up and get me a mark, and then I can measure after that where they go, and they'll all be relatively square. Just dry fitting everything right now. Get everything cut and dry fitted. So I'm just dry fitting everything. Okay, so that's got all the framing in for the bunks.